Hi, y'all. I know I have the coveted spot of being the only thing that is preventing y'all from going to lunch, so I will be very succinct about this. My name is Liz Chavez, and yes, I'm excited to talk to you about moving through the enablement maturity curve, but I'm more excited because this is the first time I get to introduce myself as Liz Chavez. I just got married. Yeah! Y'all can see my maiden name, so you understand why this is so exciting. I just got married in November, so really exciting to be here. All right, so I'm an enabler like you all. I know that we're all here to get some practical, tactical things that we can apply once we get back at work on Monday. And so what I lack in fancy slides, I will offer to you in enthusiasm and real life examples. But I have some simple goals for this session. One is I want you guys to leave with a diagnostic tool that you can implement at your organization to help you manage wherever you are on the enablement maturity curve. The second thing is I really want to plant some ideas for you as you're thinking about your own professional development. I know that we're all here, we're all high achievers, but building your own professional development plan is so important. And the last one is I hope for at least one big smile moment, so I can see y'all, see those smiles. So hold me accountable. At the end of this, we'll do a spot check, make sure we get all those done. All right. I was really honored to be invited to speak today. I have been in enablement for over a decade now. I started at Rackspace, which is about 7,000 employees, where I helped to build their social advocacy and social selling programs. From there, I went to IBM, which at the time had about 300,000 employees, and I was supporting their global markets across 7 key regions. From there, in my last few roles, I have gone into startups where I've been the first sales enablement hire, helping to build enablement as a strategic function. I have reported up through marketing, through sales, through revenue operations, and I have built programs of all shapes and sizes, from one-on-one deal strategy to cloud training for 20,000 sellers. I'm really proud to say that some of the programs I've managed have been featured in case studies, like with LinkedIn, Guru, and most recently with Seismic and Lessonly. So I think I was invited here today because y'all have seen some things. Like, that is a much better picture for me on my bio. It's true. I've had a really unique perspective in working at companies of different sizes about how to manage the enablement maturity curve. But I think most importantly, for all the things that I've seen, I have not lost my sense of humor or my hair yet from pulling it out. So I'm excited to share with y'all some of those things. Now, I know we're all enablers in here, and so we're all familiar with the maturity model, but I do just want to do a quick level set because there are different maturity models out there. I'll be honest, I grabbed this one from HighSpot, no relation with them. I just liked the graphic, and I liked that it had 5 steps. So I am going to do sort of the Cliff Notes version of each phase of the maturity model represented by an emoji. So over here we've got ad hoc. That is like my pants are on fire. And I loved having the solo enabler presentation right before this because that is usually when your pants are on fire. In this phase, you're usually a solo person. You're trying to manage all of the needs and expectations. There's probably not a content management system. And if you have onboarding, it's woefully out of date. Then you get to the reactive phase. And I think of more of this like your cheers, everybody knows your name and there's kind of a little camaraderie. But let's be honest, finding things comes down to really who you know because it could be anywhere. And then you as the enabler, maybe you're hearing about things sort of second or third degree, but you're not quite invited to the meeting yet. And then if you have onboarding, it's only simply because you've onboarded yourself. When we get to manage, this is that high five emoji stage. This is like things are in place. You've got a set of tools. This is the phase where you start to hear things like, yeah, you can find that in Guru, or I think there's a Lessonly module on that. It is sort of music to our enablement ears. And this is actually when you can start to feel the impact of your programs, impacting revenue, reducing ramp time. Things of those start to get a trickle there. When you get to data-driven, this is oh my gosh, I've got charts. I get really excited about charts. This is where you have a sales process that is mapped. You are measuring conversion metrics. You are reducing ramp time. And you are able to start to build in feedback loops. And then finally, optimize. This is gold star. Everybody's a winner. This is where you take that data-driven decision-making to the next level. Every part of your sales cycle is optimized and measured. The content that you're sending out, you know exactly when it goes out and exactly how it works. And in this phase, you really start to become that strategic partner. So enablement has a seat at the table. They're involved in territory planning, capacity planning, and revenue planning. Fantastic. All right, remember those emojis, they're gonna come back in. Now, I think there's a myth about how this model works. And it goes a little something like this. Okay, you're over here in the startup world and you're into ad hoc. And let's be honest, like a lot of startups are ad hoc, that's true. But the idea is, you're a startup and then you IPO and you grow into this global conglomerate and just naturally you become optimized. Which, let's be honest, a lot of global conglomerates are not optimized. And so I think the reality is a little bit harder. Growth does not necessarily equate to maturity. And your organization can be anywhere on that maturity curve at any point in time. And so I have some, I'll call them hard truths that I've learned about enablement maturity. The first one is that change can set you back no matter what. No matter what size you are, no matter how established your programs you feel you are, changes like mergers and acquisitions, leadership changes, big strategy changes, hypergrowth, recessions can set you back on that model, and we kind of have to accept that that's our reality. I think that's why it's so important we have moments like this to take a pause and do these kind of assessments of where we are so that we can plan for what would shift if there's an impending change. The next thing is you all as leaders have some critical skills that you need to own in order to advance your organization through change and growth. And so we're going to take a moment to have a time to evaluate ourselves in relation to where your organization is in the maturity curve and plan for your own professional development. And then finally, we all know that enablement is inherently cross-functional, and you're gonna need that organizational support to advance. And so we're gonna talk about some fun ways that you can make that happen. All right, let's get started. So evaluating your organization, this is where I told you I want you to tune back into those emojis, see which one is most relevant to you. Are you over here, pants on fire? Are you like, no, we got some charts and graphs? So think about that for a second. And if you need some criteria to think about how to evaluate your organization, I'll kind of highlight some for you. So between ad hoc and reactive, I think this is where you start to develop your onboarding. So if you have a formalized onboarding, you're maybe somewhere in there. Between reactive and managed, I think that's really that content management system. You know where the content is, and there's some sort of process in place to make sure it's updated on a consistent basis. When you get to managed and data-driven, that's more about that refined and defined sales process, and you're measuring conversion. And then finally, again, I'd love to meet some optimized people. I don't know if I've ever reached that mountain yet. But data-driven to optimize, that is that critical feedback loop. That is where you have programs like Voice of the Customer. You're implementing best practices from the field. All right, so think about where you are on the maturity curve. And then I want you to, I was going to get yoga for a moment, like close your eyes. And imagine you are here 1 year from now, back at this conference, and you have advanced, whatever that looks like for your organization. I want you to think for a second, what criteria would you have met to know that you've advanced as an organization? So again, back to that criteria, is it that you finally got that content management system you've been so eager to get? Is it that you formalize sales onboarding in a different way and have role-specific onboarding? Like, what would it look like? Which emoji would you be 1 year from now if you were able to advance your organization? Now, I saw some sighs and I saw some people sit back. I get it. You're like, Liz, my pants are on fire and you're talking to me about doing more and getting more advanced? I totally understand, and I'm here to empathize, but I'm also here to help. So one of my first goals was to provide you with a diagnostic framework that you can implement in your organization. Let's be honest, managing change is complex. There are no two ways about it. And that's why I love this chart. Yes, take those pictures. It was one of my favorite charts for so many different reasons. One is it's pretty simple. It really breaks down change into some manageable categories. The second is it's colorful. I love me some color charts. So I'm going to walk you through it and kind of how this works. First is the vision. You need to know the criteria that when you arrive there, you'll know you got there. Like, what very specifically have you done or accomplished to know that you reached the next step of maturity? The second is your organization is probably going to need to upskill in some critical ways. Are they ready for it? The third is incentives, and I think this is a really important one. Incentives are not just spiffs. It's not always just money making. It is, what is the benefit to your organization to make this investment and move up the maturity? Resources, let's get practical, tactical. Is it people? Is it budget? Is it tools? What do you need to make this happen? And then finally, your action plan. Is it step-by-step approach, and is it in a realistic time frame? So that's why I wanted you all to imagine yourself 1 year from now and where you realistically think you can accomplish. Now, I promise this was a diagnostic tool because, yes, it is beautiful to have all of those things, all of those boxes checked before you start a program or an initiative. But let's be honest, most of us don't have all those pieces. And so this is where the diagnostic comes in. If you or your stakeholders start to exhibit any of those emotions down there in purple, so things like false starts, frustration, resistance, anxiety, sometimes you have a potpourri of all of them, you can come back to this chart and quickly diagnose where you need to double down in your plan. All right, I promised real life examples. Yes, I've done this. I promise it works. So here's an example I used at a company, and they shall name be anonymous, but they were somewhere probably between ad hoc and reactive. And yet I had some key stakeholders that wanted me to build the most robust certification program you can ever imagine. It was going to be the second Harvard Business Review, according to them. So I had to sit them down and we worked through this process. And it was so incredible to see the vision that they started with and where we ended up. So in the vision section, and yes, I love color Post-it notes. In the vision section, again, we were able to get those stakeholders to start to realize that it was grandiose. As you can see in the skills that they were expecting to address with the sellers was overwhelming. And the incentives, now they did give this some good thought, but when it really tied back to the business, it was a little loose. And then as typically happens with this process, the resources and action plan were a lot lighter than the other sections. And so through this process, I was able to align those 10 stakeholders to realize that based on where we were, again, sort of ad hoc reactive, it was better to allocate our resources and time to implementing a better onboarding program than it was to build this grandiose certification program that would have taken so much time and resources, and let's be honest, they weren't ready to commit. So that's what we did. We put this on hold. We were able to invest the resources in onboarding, and it made a lot of progress. So now it's your turn. I would love to hear if this is helpful to y'all, if you guys have a chance to implement this, whether it's around sort of your annual planning or a next upcoming project. And as I said, it doesn't have to be like this robust. It could just be in the background where you're starting to use those assessments and noticing the resistance from your stakeholders or anxiety in yourself and how you can diagnose it. All right, moving on to you, talking about you. There are some key skills that you all need as enablers to help your organization manage where they are in the maturity curve. Now again, these are not official, my sort of interpretations of these emojis. But when you're over in ad hoc, you're gonna have to be a little bit of that generalist. You're gonna be doing a little bit of something for everybody. So you're doing a little bit of project management, a little bit of content creation, a little bit of instructional design. When you get to reactive, that is when building those strategic relationships is so important. So you're gonna have to be everybody's best friend. When you get to managed, I really hope that they've let you hire somebody by this point, so hopefully you're actually a manager and getting some help. You're gonna be developing those delegation and strategic leadership qualities. In data-driven, that's where you need to be the driver, finding trends, analytic storytelling. And then finally in optimized, you're gonna be that expert. You're gonna be that strategic partner. Now, the challenge happens when you or somebody on your team is not aligned with the skill set of where you are with an organization. Maybe you all have experienced something like this. You get somebody coming from an optimized company and they get hired at an ad hoc company and they just can never seem to find their footing. Or you get somebody from an ad hoc company and they go over to a data-driven company and they are literally stepping on everybody's toes because they're trying to do a little bit of everybody's job. That's what I'm talking about with skills alignment. It is so important that you know, again, where your organization is and you know your own personal sweet spot and how you can plan to align your skills with where your organization is at. And back to my favorite chart. Professional development is a complex change. So I really challenge you to do the same process for yourself, imagining yourself a year from now. What skills have you developed? What are the incentives that you have to develop those skills and the resources that you need, whether it's training or conferences like this? And then do you have an action plan to get there? I'll personally say that this for me this year is all around that analytic storytelling. So my Salesforce skills are probably subpar, but I'm working on them. I'm working to build my own dashboarding. I'm working to build my own reporting because I know how critical those skills are to where we are as an organization. So challenge submitted. Want to hear how that goes for y'all. And then last but not least, we know that organizations need support in order to get to that next level. And let's be honest, the best way to do that is to have a little bit of fun. So I'm not denying, we have some really hard jobs. We're often managing without direct authority. Like we need them to listen to us, but they don't really have to. We're also managing reps that have their own maturity curve, literally on maturity, but their own unique learning styles, their own preferences, and their own experiences. And then I heard it said earlier, like if we try to do it all, we will burn out. And so the best thing I can say is finding those moments of joy, finding those moments of fun, finding the things that make you chuckle a little bit and leaning into those, that is not only a gift to your teams, but it's a gift to yourself. And so back to, again, I haven't lost my sense of humor. I really think that my sense of humor is like the thing that's kept me going in enablement for 10 years. So I'm gonna be a little vulnerable here, and I'm gonna show some real life examples. They are not fancy by any means, because fun across the enablement maturity can look really different. And I'm also gonna say the asterisk of the examples I'm about to share with you, none of them cost any money. I think it's really important. I didn't want to alienate any groups if you're operating on like a really lean budget. So again, these are going to be pretty scrappy, but I think that that's what makes them relatable. Here we go. Celebramos. So at the ad hoc phase, if you are the pants on fire, it is so important to yourself and the program that you celebrate itty-bitty wins. Everything needs to be celebrated. So for those of you that speak Spanish, habla español, celebramos is literally we celebrate. And so that is something we started at Rackspace was when we were building that program from the ground up, we celebrated weekly wins with the team. That was so contagious, it turned into a monthly departmental celebramos. And then that became so contagious, we were actually doing a quarterly global celebramos as a marketing department. It was pretty fun. So again, in the ad hoc phase, celebrate those wins, find a way to make that public. It builds momentum for you and yourself, and it starts to become contagious. All right, this is another one, again, a bit tongue-in-cheek. Oh no, my other emojis didn't make it. Well, just imagine a piece of meat and a fist right there. Y'all know I love some emojis. Jerry's, like my teammate Ashley, Jerry's gonna die if he knows I put this one up here, but I think it's great. All right, so this one is one example of being in a reactive phase. In reactive phase, you're building those internal champions, you're developing relationships. And I think the message here is, especially as long-term enablers, we sometimes might feel we know the right way. And what I'm going to challenge you in this phase is you might have to step back from that right way and lean into what's happening. And this is a great example of it. We were rolling out some new messaging to align to our new product set, which meant everybody's favorite thing, we have to redo our pitch decks. Yay. Now, as a long-term enabler, I really know what it takes to internalize those messaging. You need multiple rounds of practice. You need some role play. You need some recorded calls, all that good stuff. I know that. I know it in my heart, my gut. But our sales VP was like, you know what I need? For each slide, we need a setup, we need some meat, and we need a punch. And I was like, oh, no, I think we need a little bit more than that. But again, I need to build that collaboration. I need to build those internal champions. And I said, you know what, Jerry, you're right. We need some setup, we need some meat, and we need some punch. And what Jerry did was deliver a fabulous SKO session where he walked all of our reps through using setup, meat, and punch to implement our new deck. And it was probably one of the most hilarious and memorable sessions of our SKO. And I have to say, the reps are leaning into it, Jerry's now leaning into it, and heck, I used a little bit of setup, meat, and punch to develop this presentation. It works. So again, in this phase, when you're in reactive phase, you might have to take a step back from those oriented processes and the checklists that we know work, and lean in when you're having somebody that's offering a bit of enthusiasm. All right, in the managed phase, this is when things are humming along. And I think it's even more important that we take a moment to incorporate elements of fun. This is a great example from our SKOs. So yes, we're in the managed phase. We have biannual SKOs. They are multi-day events. Yes, I did survive. but they tend to become pretty content heavy. And we are still mostly remote, so they are done over Zoom. And that's why I think it's so important that as part of your agenda, you're incorporating moments of fun. So here's a moment of fun that we had as part of our SKO. I will be honest, when I joined SpyCloud and learned about how vulnerable we all are on the cyber web, I wanted to put on my tinfoil hat. So we had a little tinfoil hat competition. As you can see, we've got some incredibly creative people. We even got our extended families involved, which was lots of fun. But I think the point here was, again, it was a moment of levity, it was relatable, and it became so contagious, this was mentioned to one of our strategic partners, who ended up doing it also as their cybersecurity awareness week. So we got some pictures from their SKO as well. So again, fun is contagious. And last but not least, we have data-driven. When you get to the point where you have data, you're able to surface whose win rates are going up, whose conversion rates are the best, who sold the first of that new product line. You want to have a place to surface those in a fun and memorable way. We do a series called Recipes for Success, and I really lean into sort of the Great British Bake Off, sort of, congratulations, we're all on the same team. So the first thing we do is congratulate. Second thing we do is we talk about the content and the assets that were used in the sale. We talk about what lessons they learned and what they would try again, and maybe what they would do differently. Now, very fun aside, so I have my little no soggy bottoms here. Nobody on our sales engineering team knew what soggy bottoms were about, so it started a whole different thread on the side, but I am happy to report that they are all Great British Bake Off fans now. So again, in that data-driven phase, how are you using that data to surface stories, make those memorable and fun? All right, we're at the end. I will get you to lunch on time. How exciting. In conclusion, I would not be an enabler if I didn't love a handy chart. So here is my recap as part of a handy chart. We've talked about now how enablement, I'm sorry to say, change can set you back regardless of where you are in the enablement maturity curve. But now you understand how to use the model and that diagnostic framework to navigate the change. The next is that you as enablers have such an impact on your ability to navigate that change and that growth. And so I really hope that using the maturity model, understanding where your organization is at, and planning for your own professional development is really helpful for you over the next year. And then last, yes, enablement is inherently cross-functional. I hope I gave you at least a few ideas. If not, I did see some smiles, so I'm going to count that as a win, for how you can make that fun. And remembering that those moments of fun, those moments of joy, they're contagious. They make what you do so memorable. And so again, I'm really excited to hear maybe what you try from this. I know I'm excited for the rest of the sessions today and to see what I go back and implement. Please do connect with me, especially with my new last name now, on LinkedIn. I would be just delighted to hear what you guys try. And with that, I think we're at questions. Or if y'all just want to go to lunch, I'm okay with that too.
What was the last bullet on Recipe for Success?
The last bullet. Let me go back. Can I go back? Oh, it was, what would you do differently? Yeah, sure. And no soggy bottoms. No soggy bottoms here. Paul Hollywood would not accept. So, there we go. Oh, got it. There you go. Yep. All right. Awesome. We can talk at lunch. No worries. All right. Thanks, guys.